Hey guys, welcome to my first look video on BMW's brand new G87 M2 CS. Well, I've never done a reveal like that, but I think this car is worth it, especially in this individual velvet blue paintwork. We'll talk more about specs, etc. very soon, but let's just rewind to March 2023. I flew out to Arizona for the launch of the then brand new G87 M2. A slightly controversial looking car at the time, but definitely, in my opinion, a sales success. Since that launch in Arizona, BMW have already updated or facelifted that M2. About 12 months ago, they gave it a power hike, so it went from 460 horsepower up to 480 horsepower, a few suspension tweaks, a few interior updates, a new steering wheel. This being a CS iteration, I already know it's going to be better than the base car in pretty much every single area. How do I know that? Well, firstly, every CS iteration BMW M car that I've tried in the past, let's say 7 to 8 years, has been an improvement over the base or the competition version that I've driven. Also, very recently, I handed back a G82 M4 CS, which, aside from its X-Drive running gear, is very, very similar ingredients-wise. And that was a brilliant car. Let's start with pricing. Before arriving here about half an hour ago, I actually had no idea what this was going to retail at in the UK. I now know. A base M2 with a ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox will set you back about £69,000 here in the UK, including all of the on-road costs. If you put the M race pack on a base M2, and that includes pricey items like the carbon bucket seats, which this car comes with as standard, the carbon roof, carbon interior trim, well, that 69 grand car becomes a £79,000 car. So 80 grand for your base M2. Using those prices and the fact that the G82 M4 CS that I recently had was priced at £120,000, well, I had figured that this would retail at about £100,000 on the nose. Thankfully, I had overestimated. In fact, one of these in base trim before options will set you back about £92,000 on the road at time of press. I mean, prices are changing on a daily and weekly basis at the moment, but the good news is that's well under £100,000 and a lot less than I had thought. And actually, if you look at it like that, it makes it about 13 grand more than an optioned up base M2, which is actually not that bad at all. A problem that I see with any CS iteration M cars that I get in the channel, people always complain about them costing too much. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that they will maybe pick up a spec sheet of a M2, 3, 4, 5 CS, look at it and go, oh, well, it's only got this much more power, or it's only got that piece and this piece, and it's not worth the money. The reality is, in my experience of driving all of the CS cars in the F generation and the G generation, is actually all of those small changes add up to make a fundamentally better, more exciting package. I actually worked out the F87 M2 CS that came out pretty much exactly 5 years ago was £76,000 with a DCT gearbox. If you put that into an inflation calculator, today, that would be £102,000. Now, I'm not defending the fact that new cars are becoming more and more expensive and less affordable, because I know inflation has gone up a lot quicker than most people's wages. This M2 CS is going to have a limited production run. I'm essentially reading that off the press release. What that probably means is that BMW UK are going to be quite selective as to who can buy one. So they're better customers, and hopefully they're going to avoid selling it to people who are just going to flip the car to make an extra couple of grand. I hope that everyone that buys one of these is going to use them and is going to keep them. I've had my M2 competition for nearly 7 years now, and I'm very proud of that, although it has changed quite a lot over those years. Be interesting, actually, down the track when I get my hands on one of these, to put my heavily modified M2 against this very nice, very new G87 M2 CS. They're going to be available in 4 colours. So we've got Black Sapphire, Brooklyn Grey, and Portimao Blue. They're all non-cost options, so you get them free with your £92,000 car, sir or madam. But you can spend an extra £4,300 for this individual velvet blue paintwork. That sounds like a lot of money, but I mean, look at it, it's very special. And the fact that they are charging you nearly £4.5 grand for a paint, it means that they're not all going to be this colour. People that are buying it to use it and want to buy it at a price point will get it in one of the other 3 colours, but people that really want to splash their cash and make their M2 CS look very special will get it in the velvet blue. I've always thought the base car is a little bit of a controversial looking thing. It's not an ugly car, but I've always described it as a Lego car because it's quite blocky looking. Down here, we have a new rubber splitter. It reminds me of something you'd find on a Porsche GT car, and obviously that's always going to be a good thing. If you do scrape it on a speed bump when you're going around London, hopefully not too many of you will be doing that with the M2 CS, it's going to protect the bottom of the car, and if you do damage that, well, I assume it's going to be a relatively affordable piece to replace. That rubber is going to deflect things really easily, and it's not going to chip because it's rubber. So your beautiful velvet blue paintwork is not going to be affected down here. Move up a little bit, well, we have some new style grills. You can see that the design language is carried over from the bigger M3 and M4. What is missing from the front end of this CS is the yellow daylight runners. And although some customers might miss the DRLs, I already know that you can get yellow chip replacements as an aftermarket option. So if you really want yellow, then you can get it. I think yellow with this paint would look absolutely stunning. When we get down the side of the car, if you can just ignore that ducktail for now, we'll get there. We will get there. Let's just focus on the gold bronze wheels, which are standard and the only option. They're a staggered setup, so we've got 19 on the front axle, 20 on the rear axle, which is been the case on all of the regular M2s, the M3s and M4s, in fact, here in the UK. But these are special wheels. They're the same ones that are on that M4 CS that I had recently. And therefore, off memory, they're about 1 kilo lighter per corner. And remember, that is unsprung mass, so it does make a big difference. And behind those wheels, on this car, you'll find the optional carbon ceramic brakes. They sit at just under £9,000, so in line with what you'd pay on an M3 and an M4. And surrounding those wheels, for the first time, you're actually going to get 3 different tyre options. Not tyre options in terms of which brand of tyre you want, but tyre options in terms of what the purpose of that tyre is, so the performance of the tyre. I believe it will either be a Pirelli, like on this particular press car, or it will be a Michelin. And those 3 options, if we're talking Michelin tyres, are going to be Sport, which would be a Pilot Sport 4S, a star-marked tyre, meaning it's homologated for the BMW M2, M3 and M4. If you go for the track tyre, it will be a Cup 2 or Pirelli equivalent, and that will be a no-cost option, star-marked again, homologated for these cars. And the Ultra Track option will be a Cup 2R or Pirelli equivalent, but that will cost you £2,500. So in my opinion, you'd be absolutely mad ticking that box. 2.5 grand, I'm not sure what a set of Cup 2Rs would cost off the top of my head for this car, but you'd be much better off getting one with Cup 2s and then spending that 2.5 grand on a set of Cup 2R tyres that you could use once every year on track. So that is my advice if you're speccing one of these. Don't waste that 2.5 grand on an extreme set of tyres that will only be useful for a couple of days in the year if you take your car on track. This also sits 8 millimeters lower, and because it's a CS, they've played around with the chassis and suspension. It still has a 3-way adjustable adaptive suspension system, and they're always very vague in terms of what they give you and tell you about the changes they've made. But once again, in my experience of driving lots of CS cars over the years, the suspension quality always feels so much better. People always assume, especially after I've just had that whole track tyre talk with you, that one of these are going to be really hard-edged and maybe uncomfortable on the road. Actually, the reality is, whatever they do to the dampers in these cars make them more user-friendly when you're on the road and better when you're on track. Now we're around the back of the car, and this is perhaps the biggest styling change and party piece of the G87 M2 CS. But before we talk about the boot, I just want to mention that it comes standard with a carbon roof, which is now an option on the regular M2. That boot, wow. It makes this model unique, very, very unique. The best thing about it is not just the styling, the fact that when you open it, you feel straight away it is carbon, very similar to what we got on the M4 CSL. So although we are missing a carbon bonnet, we're getting a carbon boot. Below this lovely ducktail, we have a unique carbon diffuser, again, standard on this car, and we have some matte black tailpipes. This doesn't have a titanium rear box like the M3 and M4 CS, but those tips are slightly different inside and out. So it'd be interesting to see what this sounds like on the move, if there are any changes. Something I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think I've said this since day one when I saw the base M2 in the studio, are these side reflector bits. I don't know, they just don't do it for me. But I have seen some aftermarket fixes that do improve that area of the back end of the car, because I think if you clean them up with the ducktail, yeah, you're starting to get a very resolved and cool looking piece of kit. Underneath this velvet blue bonnet, we'll find the familiar S58 engine. It's a 3-litre inline-6 twin turbo, except they've turned the wick up a little bit on this CS version. The base M2, when it was launched just over 2 years ago, had 460 horsepower. When they updated that car about 12 months ago, it had 480 horsepower. This has 530 horsepower. That's a 50 horsepower increase, 650 newton meters. I think that should be enough, especially when I tell you that this M2 CS is rear-wheel drive only. There is no fancy MX drive system on this car. And I've recently driven Russ and Tim's Swift Performance M2 that's had a bit of a tune. That's running just under 600 horsepower, so fairly similar sort of power levels. And once you got some heat in the tyres on that car, it was all very manageable. And I think it's great that BMW M have stuck with the rear-wheel drive only recipe on their baby M car, because although people do complain about the M3 and M4 having the MX drive system, I never get or understand that, because you can program your M2 button to decouple the front axle and then you've got a rear-wheel drive car, but people still complain that is the internet. I'm sure there will be some smaller changes going on elsewhere, just like with the other CS cars. If you jump in an M3 or an M4 CS, there's something different about their idle, there's something different about the way they pick up. It's not just we've added this much power. There's always smaller changes that BMW M seem to always keep quiet, but that is a positive and a bonus for the customer. Something else to note is this S58 is on specific CS engine mounts, which are probably a bit stiffer than the regular engine mounts. But it doesn't have the CS/CSL strut brace on the top, but I'm pretty sure you can buy one of those aftermarket if you really want to make your engine bay look a little bit better. In terms of performance figures, once again, like the price, I didn't know what they were until I walked in earlier on. And I'd guessed, looking at the G82 M4 CSL's times of 3.7 to 62, I'd guessed 3.8, and it is 3.8. Although we know in reality it's probably going to be more like 3.5 to 60 miles an hour, something like that, depending on conditions. If you've got your ultra track tyres in ultra sunny weather, then yeah, I reckon you'd get a sub 3.5 second, no worries whatsoever. Goes on to a limited top speed of 188 miles an hour. I say that because we're not 100% certain, but I've had a stock M2 up to around that sort of speed where it did hit a soft limiter, so I'm guessing it's the same with this. I reckon if they lifted that soft limiter, this is probably a 200 mile an hour car, which is insane. So those of you that are going, oh my God, I can't spend £100,000 on a 2 Series BMW. Well, it's a 200 mile an hour 2 Series BMW that has lots of special bits on it. But anyway, let's close this bonnet and jump inside. Oh no, I got my fingerprints on this beautiful paintwork. Jumping inside, it's a very familiar place to sit, especially for me, having owned, 4 G-Series M3s over the past 4 or so years. First thing to talk about is the M2 CS badging on the door sills. And then as soon as you get in here, I guess the first thing you see is this beautiful carbon fibre, unique CS center console. It's pretty much exactly the same as the one that we get in the M3 and M4. What am I sitting in? My favourite seats, potentially my favourite seats ever, the BMW's carbon bucket seat. Why are they my favourite seats? Well, when you're in them at least, they are super, super comfortable and they give you so much adjustability. I am 6'4", for those of you that don't know, and I've got a very long torso. My driving position, therefore, can be compromised in a lot of cars, especially if I'm going on track and I'm putting a helmet on my really big head, really big helmet. But this car suits and fits me perfectly. But I knew that would be the case because it's the same H point as the regular M2, and I've driven plenty of those with these seats. So perfect driving position. Just a little note, these seats also have an illumination around the back, and instead of saying M3 or M4 or M2, it now says CS. Just a nice little touch. While we're talking about nice little touches, well, we have some CS illumination in the door cards. Don't know if you're aware, but when they launched this, let's call it current 2 Series, where you could get fancy patterns in the doors that illuminated at night, and I guess they're better than just having a plain door card. But the way they've used it with this CS is really cool. It's very classy. It's not tacky, looks good, and they've made it look like a sort of carbon panel as well. So I like that touch. In front of us, I have an LCI M2 interior, meaning I've got the updated vents and dash layout. Not sure where I sit with that. I think I prefer the old-fashioned vents. I know BMW are changing them lots at the moment. My M5, or the new 5 Series, I mean, if you didn't know where they were, you wouldn't be able to find them. They're just hidden away and a little bit fiddly. At least these ones are still very manual, but I don't think they're any better than the pre-facelift version. What is better is the operating system, or the iDrive system. This has the 8.5 version in line with the M2 LCI. All works really well. I'm very familiar with it now. And although when the curved display first came, I, at the time said that I prefer my old school traditional dials, I'm very used to this layout now. It's very configurable. We have the setup menu, which gives us essentially throttle mapping settings, chassis settings. So we've got the 3-way adjustable dampers, as we talked about on the outside, although I'm sure they've been tweaked a lot for this car. We have steering, comfort or sport. Leave it in comfort. Sport's just awful. One thing that the G-Series M cars suffer from, and I've talked about this a lot on my channel, is lack of steering feel. If you put it in sport, just forget it. You can't feel anything. brake, sport and comfort. Put the brakes in sport, as far as I'm concerned, just gives you more stopping power and for some reason a bit more modulation. We also have the 10-way M traction control, which is not a gimmick, it is fantastic. And I've experimented with that, in fact, with Misha a few years ago in a manual M4 out in Germany. And we went through every single level, starting at 10, going down, and you could feel the differences and changes. When you get down towards sort of 2 and 3, it feels like there is no traction control, but it will still save you most of the time. Remember, there to help you, but if you completely run out of talent or push the boundaries of physics, you're still going to end up off the road and in a field. So don't drive too recklessly, especially on the road. Take it out on track. And I can't wait to experiment with that in one of these 530 horsepower M2 CSs. The last change that I can see in here is this new updated wheel with the flat bottom has Alcantara on it. I'm told that you can option leather back in for no cost. So you can either have Alcantara or leather. I don't love this wheel. You probably know that already. And the reason I don't love it is not aesthetically, because I think it looks really good. Functionally, apart from when you hold it, it works really well. It's got buttons in the right places. You've got your M1 and M2 button there. You've got lovely carbon paddles around the back. But it's just the excessive amount of padding that they put in the rim of their wheels. I think that must be pushed and led by marketing more so than the other side. I could be wrong. After you spent a lot of time in some of Porsche's products, well, all of their wheels are nice and thin, and they're thin for a reason, because you get steering feel, and that's something that this car does and will suffer from, is lack of steering feel. So I wish you got a thinner rim. I think we are just about done with this studio shoot. I'm not going to go on for too much longer. I'm really delighted that BMW UK invited me down here for this first look, because I get very excited about these, really excited about these. And I'm looking so forward to driving one. Something we didn't talk about on the outside is this could potentially, now at least, be the last combustion engine only BMW M car. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give us a thumbs up if you did. Leave any comments and questions below. Please also consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'll see you at another video very soon. Cheers.